In a quiet town, where the streets were narrow and the air felt slow, life moved in a very simple way. People woke up early, opened their small shops, watered their plants, and greeted each other with soft smiles. It was the kind of town where nothing big ever seemed to happen. Most people felt comfort in that peaceful routine. There was a young woman who lived in a small rented room near an old bus stop. Her days were not easy, but she never complained. She worked at a local clothing store, folding dresses and arranging shelves for long hours. Her hands were often tired, but her heart stayed gentle. She believed that kindness was the only thing that never ran out, even when customers were rude or when sales were low. She stayed calm and polite. She had lost a lot in her life, though she never spoke about it. Her parents had passed away when she was still in school, and she had learned to grow up quickly. She learned how to cook simple meals, how to fix broken buttons, and how to smile even when she felt lonely. At night, she would sit by the window and watch the streetlights, thinking about how the world felt so big and she felt so small inside it. Not far from her room, there lived a young man who kept mostly to himself. He worked as a delivery driver, moving through the town all day on his motorcycle. He was quiet, and people often thought he was serious, but deep inside, he was just tired of being strong all the time. He lived with his younger sibling and carried a lot of responsibility on his shoulders. He worked extra hours and skipped rest days just to make sure there was food at home. He had dreams before, but life had pushed those dreams into a quiet corner of his heart. Still, there was something warm inside him that never died. On some evenings, he would sit on the rooftop of his building and look at the sky, wondering if life had something better planned for him. One late afternoon, the quiet rhythm of the town changed for both of them. The woman had just finished her shift and was walking home. The sun was setting and the sky was soft with orange and pink colors. She stopped by a small roadside stand to buy a piece of bread for dinner. As she reached for her bag, she realized she had forgotten her wallet at the shop. Her heart dropped. She stood there feeling embarrassed, not knowing what to say. The shop owner looked tired and impatient. A small line of people formed behind her. Her face turned warm with shame, and she gently placed the bread back on the table at that moment. The young delivery driver stepped forward. He had stopped there to buy some water after a long day of work. He noticed her confusion and the way her hands trembled slightly. Without thinking too much, he told the shop owner to add the bread to his bill. His voice was calm and low. He didn't look for thanks. He simply handed over the money as if it was nothing. The woman tried to refuse at first. She didn't like taking help from anyone, but he gave a small smile and said it was okay, that it was just bread and nothing more. There was no pride in his voice, no expectation of anything back. She thanked him softly, and their eyes met for a brief second. It was a quiet moment, but it felt different. There was no spark of drama, just a feeling of safety and understanding. They walked away in opposite directions after that. No phone numbers exchanged. No promises made. Just two strangers returning to their ordinary lives. But that night felt different for both of them. As the woman sat in her small room eating the bread, she thought about the kindness of a stranger. She wasn't used to help. She had always survived on her own. Yet the simple act of someone caring without reason stayed in her heart, longer than she expected. She wondered what kind of person he was, why he helped without hesitation, and how someone could be kind without wanting something back. At the same time, the young man rode home slowly. The cool night air touched his face. He kept thinking about the way she looked so strong and yet so fragile at the same time. He wasn't trying to impress her. He barely even knew her. But for some reason, helping her felt natural. It's like it was something he had been meant to do. That small moment stayed with him while he ate dinner with his sibling, while washing the dishes, while lying in bed, staring at the ceiling. The town went back to being quiet again the next day, just like always. But inside two hearts, something had gently shifted. Neither of them knew it yet. But that simple moment by the roadside stand had become the beginning of a story they never planned. A story that would slowly touch their souls in ways they could never imagine. The days that followed were gentle and slow, yet full of small moments that neither of them noticed at first. Life went on in the quiet town as usual. The woman returned to her work at the clothing store, folding clothes and arranging shelves, while the young man continued his long hours delivering packages, weaving through narrow streets and stopping at familiar corners. Each of them carried the memory of that small roadside encounter like a tiny seed planted in their hearts, though neither was aware it was beginning to grow. One morning, the woman was organizing new arrivals at the store when a customer called out to her. It was a small request for help finding a particular dress. She moved quickly, trying to help as best as she could. When she returned to the front of the store, she noticed a familiar figure standing near the door. The young man was there, buying a bottle of water and a small snack. Their eyes met, and there was a brief moment of recognition. She felt a flutter in her chest, but quickly looked away, embarrassed. He nodded slightly, as if acknowledging the small but meaningful connection they had shared before, and walked out without saying a word. That day, she found herself thinking about him more than she wanted to admit. She remembered the kindness in his voice, the calm way he had helped her, and the ease of his presence. There was something soothing about it, a sense of warmth she hadn't felt in a long time. She tried to focus on her work, but every now and then her thoughts drifted back to him. It was strange and unfamiliar, this feeling of curiosity mixed with comfort. For his part, the young man couldn't stop thinking about her either. He remembered the way she had seemed so self-contained, so strong, yet quietly burdened by life. There was a gentleness in her eyes, and a resilience in her demeanor that drew him in without him realizing it. On his delivery routes, he found himself glancing at places she might pass, wondering if their paths would cross again. It was a strange mix of hope and caution. He wasn't used to feeling this pull toward someone he barely knew, yet it was there, undeniable and persistent. A few days later, their paths did cross again. The woman was on her way home from the store, carrying a small bag of groceries. She struggled a little with the weight, her hands shaking slightly from fatigue. The young man appeared from the opposite direction, carrying a few packages. He noticed her immediately, and without hesitation, he offered to help carry the heavier items. She was hesitant at first, not wanting to trouble him, but he insisted gently, his calm presence leaving no room for argument. They walked together for a short distance, side by side, talking about small things, the weather, the slow pace of the town, and the quiet streets. There were no grand declarations, only simple words, and yet each word built a bridge between them. Over the next few weeks, a pattern began to form. They started seeing each other more often, sometimes by chance, sometimes in moments that seemed almost orchestrated by fate. There were smiles exchanged in the mornings, brief conversations at the corner store, and shared laughter over small, ordinary things. Slowly, a quiet friendship grew. It was not the kind of loud, dramatic connection that people noticed from the outside. It was gentle, steady, and rooted in understanding. They didn't rush into anything. There was no pressure, no expectation, only the natural ease of being around someone who understood without judgment. During this time, they shared pieces of their lives little by little. She spoke about her work at the store, the challenges of living alone, and the dreams she held quietly in her heart. He listened with patience, never interrupting, never offering unsolicited advice. He shared his own stories, too, of long days on the delivery route, the responsibilities he carried for his sibling, and the moments when he felt both tired and hopeful. In their conversations, there was a sense of honesty that neither had experienced in a long time. They didn't have to hide behind masks or pretenses. They could be themselves, and that in itself was comforting. One evening, as the sun dipped low and the streets glowed with the soft light of dusk, they found themselves sitting on a small bench by the river. It was a quiet place where the town seemed to pause, and for the first time, they talked about more personal matters. She spoke about the loneliness she often felt, the memories of her parents, and the way life sometimes felt heavier than she could carry. He listened without interruption, offering only a hand to hold when she needed it, a gentle presence that said more than words ever could. In that moment, there was no need for grand gestures or promises. The simple act of being there for each other was enough. As days turned into weeks, the friendship deepened. They began to rely on each other in small ways. She would leave a note at the store for him when she had to run errands, and he would sometimes bring a small snack to her room when he passed by. It was not love yet, at least not in the way the world expected. It was something quieter, something softer bond built on trust, kindness, and shared moments of understanding. The townspeople began to notice their connection, though neither of them paid much attention to gossip. Some would smile knowingly when they saw the two walking together, sharing a quiet laugh, or helping each other in small ways. Others whispered about how unusual it was for two young people to have such a calm, steady bond in a town where most relationships were loud and fleeting. But they didn't care. They were not trying to impress anyone or seek approval. Their focus was simply on the comfort they found in each other's presence. One rainy afternoon, the woman found herself struggling to carry groceries back from the market. The young man appeared almost as if by instinct, offering to help without hesitation. They ran together under the thin shelter of his umbrella, laughing as the rain soaked their clothes. That simple moment, so ordinary, yet so full of warmth, became another memory etched into their growing friendship. They didn't need words to explain the feeling. It was understood in the laughter, the shared shivers from the cold, and the ease of walking side by side. There were quiet nights when she would think about him, wondering if he felt the same way she did. She tried not to overthink it, telling herself that it was just friendship, nothing more. Yet there was a part of her heart that hoped for something deeper, something she didn't have the courage to name. She had been hurt before, and she had learned to protect herself. But his presence was different. It didn't demand anything from her. It only offered comfort, patience, and understanding. He too felt the same uncertainty. He had never been one to express emotions easily, and yet he found himself drawn to her in ways that surprised him. It wasn't just admiration or attraction, it was a quiet recognition, as if he had known her in some other life. He felt a deep respect for her resilience, a tenderness for her struggles, and an unspoken desire to protect her from the harshness of the world. And yet he knew that love could not be forced. He cherished the moments they shared, letting the connection grow naturally. Without rushing or pressuring it, life continued its gentle rhythm in the town. The woman's days were filled with work, small chores, and the quiet moments she spent thinking about the young man. His days were long and tiring, yet they carried a sense of anticipation, a small spark that made the exhaustion bearable. Every meeting, every shared smile, every word of kindness added layers to their bond, creating a connection that was becoming harder to ignore. One evening, as the town settled into the calm of night, they sat together on the same bench by the river. The water reflected the soft glow of streetlights, and the air was filled with the quiet sounds of crickets and distant traffic. She leaned slightly against his shoulder, feeling the warmth and safety of his presence. He didn't move or speak, only let her rest there, knowing that the simple act of being together was enough. In that silence, there was a sense of understanding deeper than words, a feeling that they were not alone in the world anymore, and so their friendship continued to grow, steady and unassuming, filled with moments that were ordinary yet extraordinary in their own way. They did not rush, they did not demand, and they did not force emotions. They simply existed in each other's presence, slowly discovering the comfort, trust, and warmth that comes from truly knowing someone. The connection they shared was quiet but strong, and neither of them realized that it was slowly shaping into something that would touch their hearts in ways they could never have imagined. Little by little, they were learning that love does not always arrive in grand gestures or dramatic confessions. Sometimes it grows quietly, in shared laughter, in helping hands, in moments of understanding, and in the gentle presence of someone who sees you without judgment. And in this simple, steady way, the foundation of something beautiful was being laid, something that would eventually become a love story so pure it would touch their souls forever. The gentle rhythm of their growing friendship began to face its first challenges. As life often has a way of testing even the strongest bonds, the town remained quiet on the surface, but beneath the calm, small pressures and responsibilities crept into their days. The woman had been doing her best to keep everything in order, managing her work at the clothing store, while also taking care of the bills and her modest rented room. It was not easy, and sometimes the weight of it all pressed heavily on her chest. She tried to hide it, But there were days when her tired eyes betrayed the exhaustion she felt. The young man, too, was facing his own burdens. The responsibilities for his younger sibling had increased, and his work hours had become longer. Packages piled up, streets became busier, and the pressure to keep everything afloat pressed down on him. Despite the exhaustion, he carried on quietly as he always did, rarely allowing himself to pause. Yet, beneath that calm exterior, worry lingered. What if something went wrong at home? What if he couldn't manage it all? These thoughts weighed on him silently, without any way to share them with anyone else. Until, of course, the woman had come into his life, offering a quiet presence that made the chaos feel a little lighter. At first, their challenges were minor. She would occasionally miss a day at the store, not because she wanted to, because she had errands or responsibilities she couldn't avoid. He would sometimes come by the store and notice her absence, feeling a subtle concern he didn't always express. They would text briefly or leave small notes for each other, making sure the other was okay. Even in these small disruptions, they found ways to maintain their connection, adapting to the unpredictable rhythm of life. But as time passed, larger tests began to emerge. One afternoon, the woman received troubling news from a distant relative. It wasn't life-threatening, but it required attention, money, and time resources she didn't have in abundance. Her mind spun with worry as she tried to figure out a solution. She wanted to share it with someone, but pride and fear held her back. She didn't want to burden anyone, especially the young man who had already shown so much kindness. But in the quiet moments when she sat alone, her thoughts inevitably returned to him. Could she trust him enough to share this? Could she let someone into her struggles without feeling weak? At the same time, the young man faced pressures from his own family. His sibling had fallen ill with a mild fever, which, though not serious, required attention and care. It disrupted his delivery schedule, forcing him to choose between work responsibilities and family obligations. He felt torn and frustrated, emotions he rarely allowed himself to feel. In the past, he would have carried everything alone, silently struggling under the weight. But now he found himself thinking about her, wondering if she might offer some quiet advice or comfort. He resisted, though, uncertain whether it was appropriate to involve her in his personal difficulties. Amid these challenges, misunderstandings began to creep in. One evening, the woman returned to the store after dealing with her relative's issue and noticed a small note from the young man. He had written about running late due to his sibling's illness, apologizing for missing their usual evening walk by the river. She misread the tone, thinking he had avoided her intentionally, feeling hurt and confused. She didn't respond immediately, fearing that reaching out might seem needy or overbearing. In her mind, the delicate balance of their friendship seemed to wobble, and she worried that any misstep could undo the comfort they had built over weeks. The young man, on the other hand, noticed her absence and misread it as indifference. He worried that she was upset with him, feeling a sting of disappointment he hadn't felt before. He considered sending a message, but pride and fear of overstepping held him back. And so, both of them endured a quiet tension, thinking the other had distanced themselves, neither fully aware that the other was struggling with similar doubts and emotions. It was a strange and unsettling feeling for both, a test of patience, trust, and understanding. Despite these small misunderstandings, the bond they shared remained resilient. They continued to notice each other in small, unconscious ways. He would pause when he passed by her store, catching a glimpse of her organizing clothes or helping a customer with a smile that never quite hid the strain in her eyes. She would see him riding past on his motorcycle, his posture slightly more tired than usual, and feel a pang of concern. Neither reached out immediately, but both were aware of the subtle pull that still tied them together. Then came a day when life forced them to confront these tensions directly. The woman had returned from dealing with her relative's needs and found a quiet moment at the small bench by the river. She sat alone, watching the water flow, trying to calm the swirl of thoughts in her mind. Moments later, the young man arrived, seeing her from a distance. He had been hesitant to come, uncertain whether she would want to see him after their recent miscommunication. But something inside him insisted, a quiet need to bridge the gap that had grown without either of them realizing it. When he approached, there was an awkward pause. Neither knew how to begin, how to untangle the web of misunderstandings without sounding confrontational. Finally, he spoke softly. "I hope I'm not intruding." She looked up, and in her eyes, he saw the same uncertainty mirrored back. They both laughed quietly, a nervous sound that broke the tension. And then, slowly, they began to talk. The conversation was not about grand apologies or dramatic declarations. It was about simple truths. She explained the challenges she had been facing, the worries that had weighed on her mind, and the fear of burdening him. He shared his own struggles, the responsibilities at home, the worry for his sibling, and the pressure of work. As they spoke, the misunderstandings began to unravel. They realized that neither had truly distanced themselves. They had merely been caught in the tide of life's pressures, each misreading the other's actions through their own lens of fatigue and stress. In that moment, there was a shift. A deeper understanding formed between them, stronger than before. They saw not only each other's kindness and warmth, but also the real challenges each carried silently. There was no judgment, no blame, only empathy, and a quiet respect for the resilience they each showed. It was a turning point, a subtle yet powerful moment that reaffirmed the strength of their bond. From that day forward, they approached their connection with renewed patience and care. They continued to support each other in practical ways. He would occasionally help her carry groceries or small packages, and she would check in to see if he had eaten or rested during his long workdays. But more importantly, they now shared an unspoken promise to be honest about their struggles, to trust in the other's intentions, and to protect the quiet strength of the bond they were building. Life, of course, did not become easier. Responsibilities continued to pile up, and challenges arose unpredictably. There were days when one of them felt overwhelmed, moments when frustration bubbled to the surface, and nights when worry kept them awake. Yet through it all, the foundation they had built carried them forward. They were learning that love and friendship were not about avoiding hardships, but about facing them together. With patience, understanding, and quiet support, the townspeople continued their daily routines, unaware of the subtle, beautiful connection growing between these two young souls. To outsiders, their interactions might have seemed ordinary, helping with a package here, sharing a brief smile there. But those small gestures were the threads of something extraordinary. Each act of kindness, each patient conversation, each moment of shared understanding wove a fabric stronger than either of them could have imagined. As the weeks passed, the young man found himself more willing to share his thoughts and feelings, no longer holding everything inside. The woman, too, began to open her heart slightly more, allowing the warmth of his presence to ease the loneliness she had carried for so long. They began to see the value in leaning on someone else, not as a sign of weakness, but as a step toward connection and growth. The quiet moments by the river, the shared walks through the town, and the simple acts of care became anchors in their lives, grounding them amidst the uncertainties of the world. And so, their friendship, tested by the realities of life, grew stronger and deeper. They learned that the true measure of a bond was not in the absence of difficulties, but in the ability to navigate them together. Misunderstandings were no longer feared but seen as opportunities to understand one another better. Challenges were no longer burdens to bear alone, but shared responsibilities that strengthened their connection. And in this way, without grand gestures or dramatic events, their relationship began to evolve into something that promised a deeper, lasting love, one built not only on affection but on resilience, empathy, and a profound respect for the life each carried quietly inside them. Little by little, each challenge, each misunderstanding, and each moment of quiet support became part of the tapestry of their story. They were learning that love was not just about joy and laughter, but about patience, understanding, and the courage to face life's difficulties together. And though they did not yet fully realize it, the trials they endured were shaping them, preparing their hearts for the moments ahead, moments that would reveal the depth of their connection and the purity of the love that was quietly taking root between them. Their story, so far, was gentle yet resilient, ordinary yet extraordinary, a testament to the quiet power of human connection in the face of life's many trials. It was a love not yet spoken aloud, but deeply felt, growing steadily in the spaces between words, in shared silences, and in the simple, unwavering presence of one soul for another. The days in the quiet town continued, and life carried its usual rhythm. But for the two young souls, the simplicity of their friendship began to feel heavier, richer, and more meaningful. What had started as small gestures and brief conversations was slowly growing into a connection that neither could ignore. They had faced challenges, navigated misunderstandings, and shared quiet moments of comfort, yet the true depth of their bond had not fully revealed itself. That was about to change. It was an ordinary morning when everything shifted. The woman had woken up to the sound of rain tapping softly against the window. She had been planning to go to the store, but the downpour made the streets slippery and difficult to navigate. As she sipped her tea, she thought about the small errands she still needed to run and felt a quiet unease in her chest. She knew the rain would slow her down, and yet she also felt grateful for the stillness it brought, a pause from the usual rush at the same time. The young man was on his motorcycle, delivering packages in the rain. The roads were crowded and wet, and each turn required caution. He noticed the smaller shops closing early to avoid the downpour, and his heart held a quiet concern for the woman. He had been thinking about her all morning, wondering if she had managed to leave for the store safely. Imagining the small struggles she might face under the heavy rain, there was a sense of anticipation, a pull to see her, not out of obligation but out of a deep, unspoken care. Their meeting that day was unexpected. She was standing under the small awning of her favorite corner shop, her clothes damp from the rain, holding a bag of essentials. He appeared a few steps away, holding his helmet under his arm, and paused when he saw her. Their eyes met, and in that moment, the world seemed to pause around them. There was no dramatic music, no sudden gesture, only the quiet, unmistakable recognition of two hearts sensing that something important was about to happen. Without a word, he approached her, offering to carry her bag. She hesitated, almost instinctively, but then nodded, grateful. As they walked together under the protection of his umbrella, the silence between them was not empty. It was filled with understanding, with the recognition that some feelings do not require speech to be understood. The rhythm of their steps, the gentle patter of rain around them, and the warmth of shared proximity spoke volumes. When they reached the small bench by the river, a place that had become their refuge, they sat down. The rain fell harder now, drumming on the leaves and creating ripples on the water. She looked at the river, the water swollen with the storm, and a shiver ran through her. He noticed immediately, placing his jacket over her shoulders without a word. The gesture was simple, yet profound, a symbol of care, concern, and presence. It was then that the woman spoke, her voice soft and hesitant. She shared something she had never said aloud before, a fear that life's burdens were becoming too heavy to carry alone. She spoke of the uncertainty she felt about her job, her responsibilities, and the loneliness that sometimes pressed against her chest. She spoke not to complain, but to release a weight she had been carrying silently. The young man listened without interruption, his eyes steady on hers. He did not offer solutions or quick reassurances. He simply listened, the quiet act of attention itself becoming a kind of support. When she paused, he spoke softly. "You're stronger than you know, but you don't have to carry everything by yourself." His words were calm, steady and unassuming, yet they carried the weight of genuine care for the first time. She allowed herself to feel vulnerable in front of him. The walls she had built over years of struggle slowly came down. Tears formed in her eyes, and he reached out, gently taking her hand. There was no pressure, no expectation, only presence. He held her hand as if it was the most natural thing in the world, a simple connection that said more than words ever could. In that moment, everything shifted. It was not a dramatic confession or a sudden declaration of love. It was quiet, subtle, and deeply profound. Both realized that their bond had grown into something more than friendship, though neither had spoken the words. The trust, the patience, the care, they were the foundation of something far deeper, something that touched the soul. After a while, the rain began to ease, and they sat together. listening to the sound of the river and watching the water flow. Neither rushed to speak again. Words were unnecessary. There was a sense of peace, a realization that they were no longer alone in facing life's challenges. The connection they had nurtured through small gestures, quiet conversations, and shared moments of understanding had become a lifeline, a safe harbor in a world that often felt overwhelming. As the sun began to peek through the clouds, casting a soft golden light over the town, the young man finally spoke again. "I've always believed that life is easier when someone understands you," he said quietly. She looked at him, her eyes reflecting the sunlight and a gentle, unspoken emotion. "I feel that with you," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. There was no rush, no dramatic gesture of embracing or declarations of forever. Instead, there was a quiet acknowledgement of what had been growing between them for weeks, the steady, patient blossoming of love, rooted in trust, empathy, and understanding. They knew that life would still be difficult, that responsibilities and hardships would continue to appear, but in that moment, the certainty of their bond was enough. In the days that followed, their connection became more visible, though still subtle. They continued to meet by the river, walked together through the quiet streets of the town, and shared conversations that revealed more of their hearts. Each interaction carried a depth that was felt rather than spoken. The townspeople noticed their closeness, but to them, it was never about appearances or recognition. It was about the genuine care they offered each other. It's a kind that cannot be faked or forced. Challenges continued to appear, of course. Work pressures, family responsibilities, and small misunderstandings tested their patience and understanding. But now, when difficulties arose, they faced them together. There was no fear of judgment, no hesitation to lean on one another. Even in moments of tension or worry, the bond they had built provided a steady foundation, a reminder that they were not alone. One evening, the woman received a message from a friend asking her to meet at a small cafe in town. She hesitated, unsure if she should go, worried about the chores she had left behind. The young man noticed her indecision and simply offered, "I can go with you if you want." She smiled softly, appreciating the offer, and agreed. The small act of going together was not romantic in an overt sense. Yet it carried a profound meaning, the choice to face life's small adventures side by side. With mutual support and care at the cafe, they shared quiet conversations over steaming cups of tea, laughing softly at small jokes and observing the life of the town around them. There were no grand gestures, no dramatic moments, only the simple joy of being together. And yet, the ordinary nature of these moments made them extraordinary. They were learning that love is often found not in loud declarations, but in quiet presence, in patience, in understanding, and in the steady rhythm of shared life. As weeks turned into months, they continued to grow closer, their bond deepening in subtle, profound ways. They learned to anticipate each other's needs, to offer comfort without being asked, and to celebrate the small joys of life together. There were moments of doubt and fatigue, of course, but they no longer felt overwhelming because they faced them together. Every challenge became an opportunity to strengthen their connection. Every quiet gesture, a reminder of the love blossoming between them. The town remained unchanged in its quiet rhythm. But for the two young souls, everything had shifted. Life had shown them that love is not about perfection, about grand promises, or about drama. It is about presence, patience, understanding, and the courage to be vulnerable. It is about sitting together in the rain, sharing fears and hopes, and holding hands without needing to say a word. In the weeks that followed that rainy afternoon, their friendship quietly transformed into love, the kind that touches the soul. It was not loud or extravagant. It was not meant for public recognition or for others to see. It was private, intimate, and deeply rooted in the simple yet profound truth. They were there for each other, always, and so their lives continued, intertwined in quiet ways that made each day brighter, each challenge more bearable, and each ordinary moment extraordinary. They had discovered the true power of connection, the gentle strength of love, built on empathy, trust, and unwavering care. It was a love that did not demand perfection, did not rush, and did not fade in the face of difficulties. It simply existed, pure, steady, and profoundly real, a love that would continue to grow, touch their souls, and shape their lives in ways they had never imagined. In that simple, quiet, yet deeply emotional way, they reached a turning point in their journey. What had begun as a small act of kindness had blossomed into a connection that neither could ignore. And though the future remained uncertain, one thing was clear: the love they shared was not fleeting, not fragile, but strong, enduring, and capable of weathering whatever life might bring. Their story was becoming something truly extraordinary, a love so pure that it would leave a mark on both their hearts forever. The days in the quiet town had a rhythm of their own. But for the two young souls, life had changed in ways that were subtle yet profound. Their connection, which had begun as simple gestures and quiet moments, had grown into something much deeper. It was no longer just friendship, no longer just the comfort of understanding. It had become love. A love that did not need to shout to be felt, a love that did not need grand displays to be real. It was steady, patient, and enduring. Built on weeks of shared moments, quiet support, and deep trust, they continued their daily lives, each carrying their responsibilities and challenges. But now there was a difference. There was an unspoken knowledge between them that they could face anything together. The woman no longer felt the sharp edge of loneliness in her chest because she knew someone cared deeply and unconditionally. The young man felt lighter, not because his burdens had disappeared, but because someone was beside him, ready to share the weight without judgment. One morning, as the sun rose over the small town, painting the streets with a soft golden light, the woman prepared to go to work. She paused by her window, watching the early birds flutter in the garden outside, felt a quiet happiness she had not noticed before. Her thoughts drifted to him, imagining his long route through the town, hoping he had eaten breakfast and was taking care of himself. It was a feeling so gentle, yet so powerful, a presence in her heart that filled the empty spaces she had carried for so long at the same time. The young man prepared for his deliveries. As he mounted his motorcycle, he thought about the small bench by the river, the quiet conversations, the laughter, the shared silences, and the warmth of her hand in his. It was a thought that made him smile, a rare and genuine smile that reached his eyes and stayed there for a while. He had never imagined that life could offer something so simple, yet so profound. A connection that made the ordinary days feel extraordinary. That afternoon, as the town moved through its usual pace, a small problem arose at the woman's store. A shipment of new clothes had arrived, and the packaging was heavier than she could manage alone. She struggled for a few minutes before she remembered him. Remembering how he had always been there without question, without expectation. She sent a quick message, asking for help, not out of dependence, but because she trusted him completely. Within minutes, he appeared, carrying the boxes with ease and a soft smile. There was no dramatic fanfare, no need for words, just presence. The simple act of helping her reminded them both of the strength of their bond. Evenings were the most cherished moments. They often walked together through the quiet streets, the town bathed in the golden glow of sunset. Sometimes, they talked about their dreams, sharing hopes that had been kept private for years. Other times they walked in silence, feeling the comfort of being understood without explanation. It was in these moments that they discovered the true beauty of their love, not in grand declarations, but in the quiet rhythm of companionship, in the ease of leaning on each other, in the trust that came without hesitation. Challenges continued to come, as they always do in life. Bills piled up. Work became stressful, and unexpected events disrupted their plans. Yet every time difficulties arose, they faced them together. The woman would offer words of encouragement, a hand on his shoulder, or a smile when he felt overwhelmed. The young man would carry groceries, fix small problems, or simply sit with her when the weight of the day pressed down. They learned that love was not about avoiding hardships, but about meeting them together. Patience, empathy, and unwavering support. Their love was not without moments of doubt or fear. There were times when the woman worried that her past, her loneliness, or her struggles might push him away. There were moments when he feared that his responsibilities, his tiredness, or his quiet nature could make her question their connection. But in every instance, the other reminded them silently that they were there for each other, steady and constant. There was no need for dramatic gestures to prove love. It was in the daily acts, the patience, the small sacrifices, and the quiet presence that they found the strength to continue. One particularly cold evening, the wind cutting through the narrow streets, they found themselves sitting together by the river once again. The water reflected the soft glow of the streetlights, and the air smelled faintly of rain from earlier that day. The woman shivered slightly, and he immediately draped his jacket over her shoulders. She looked at him, a soft smile on her lips, and in that moment, words were unnecessary. They understood each other completely, felt each other's care, and trusted in the bond that had grown over time. It was during these quiet moments that they discovered the most profound part of love, the way it transforms ordinary life into something extraordinary. The woman found herself more confident, more patient, more open to the beauty in small things because of the steady presence of the young man. He, too, discovered a softer side of himself, a gentleness he had long suppressed, nurtured and brought to life through her trust and understanding. Together, they became stronger, not because life had become easier, but because they had someone beside them who shared the weight of their struggles and celebrated the small joys of life as weeks turned into months. Their lives intertwined in ways that were quiet but deeply meaningful. They began planning small moments together, a walk in the park, a visit to the bakery. Sitting on the same bench by the river as the seasons changed, every shared moment, no matter how ordinary, became a memory, a thread woven into the fabric of their growing love. They laughed at the smallest things, celebrated minor victories, and comforted each other in times of worry. The world outside might have seemed unchanged, but for them, life had become richer, fuller, and infinitely more beautiful. One day the young man found a small notebook on a bench near the river. Inside, the woman had written a few lines about her dreams, fears, and hopes for the future. He read it quietly, carefully, feeling the weight of her words, the honesty and vulnerability within them. He realized that she had entrusted him with a part of herself that she had rarely shared with anyone else. It was a moment of deep connection, a silent promise that they were building something enduring, something that went beyond attraction or infatuation. It was trust, and it was love. They began speaking more openly about the future, not with grand promises or expectations, but with gentle discussions about hopes and possibilities. They imagined what life could be like, side by side, and while they did not know all the answers, conversations themselves brought comfort. They discovered that love is not about controlling the future, but about choosing to face it together, to be present for one another, and to nurture the connection that has already proven its strength and resilience. As the seasons changed, their bond only deepened. Winter brought long walks wrapped in scarves. Spring brought laughter and blooming gardens. Summer brought quiet evenings by the river. And autumn brought the beauty of falling leaves shared hand in hand. Each season became a backdrop for their growing love, a reminder that life, though sometimes unpredictable and challenging, could also be filled with warmth, joy, and comfort when shared with the right person in the quiet moments. Away from the eyes of the world, they reflected on the journey that had brought them here. From a chance meeting by the roadside stand to long conversations by the river, from shared struggles to small acts of kindness, they had built a love that was not flashy, not rushed, but deeply enduring. They realized that the true measure of love is not in the grand gestures, but in the patient, consistent care for one another, in the ability to face life's ups and downs together, and in the trust that grows quietly day by day. Even the townspeople began to notice the change. Not because of dramatic displays, but because of the way they moved through life together, the calm confidence in their companionship, the gentle care evident in every shared gesture. People would see them laughing quietly, walking together through the streets, or helping each other without speaking, and they could feel the authenticity of their connection. It was a love that did not need validation, a love that was self-sufficient, yet profoundly affecting to those who witnessed it. Over time, the woman and the young man began to dream not just individually, but but together. They planned small goals, supported each other's ambitions, and celebrated progress, no matter how minor it seemed. Every challenge that life threw their way became an opportunity to reinforce their trust, patience, and understanding. And in every moment, whether ordinary or difficult, they found reassurance in the quiet certainty of their bond. They learned that love is not always about excitement or grand gestures. Sometimes it is about the small, consistent choices to be present, to care, and to understand. It is about staying when things are hard, listening when words are few, and offering support without expectation. It is about seeing someone fully, accepting their flaws, celebrating their strengths, and creating a shared life built on trust, empathy, and quiet devotion. And so, their story reached its most beautiful point, not with fireworks, not with dramatic confessions, but with steady, enduring love. A love that had started with a simple act of kindness grown through quiet patience, and blossomed into a connection so pure that it touched not only their hearts, but the very essence of who they had become. They knew that the future would still bring challenges, that life would continue its unpredictable rhythm, and that difficulties would arise. Yet they also knew that together they could face anything. Their lives, once quiet and solitary, had become intertwined in the most natural and profound way. Every day held small joys, every shared smile carried meaning, and every quiet moment together strengthened the foundation of their love. It was a love that did not demand perfection, did not rush, and did not fade. It was a love that was steady, patient, and deeply human, a love that healed, nurtured, and endured. In the end, they discovered that the true power of love lies not in dramatic events or fleeting passion, but in the quiet, everyday presence of someone who sees you, understands you, and chooses to stay by your side. And that was exactly what they had found in each other. A love so pure, so steady, and so deeply felt that it touched their souls forever. From that moment onward, their story continued not as a tale of chance encounters, struggles, or missteps, but as a testament to the quiet, enduring beauty of love built on trust, patience, and mutual care. It was a love that would continue to grow, weathering storms, celebrating joys, and shaping their lives in ways both ordinary and extraordinary. And in the quiet town, amidst the soft glow of streetlights, the rustling of leaves, and the gentle flow of the river, their love existed, steady, true, an unshakably love that touched the soul and would remain with them always. The town had grown quieter in its usual way. Yet for the two young souls, life had become fuller than they could have imagined. Their days were no longer simply about work or survival. Every morning brought the soft expectation of seeing each other, sharing a smile, a word, or even a quiet glance that spoke volumes. Over time, they had discovered that love was not always a loud or dramatic feeling. It often revealed itself in the small, steady acts of care, in the moments that seemed ordinary but carried deep meaning. It was early morning when the woman woke, sunlight streaming gently through her window. She stretched and took a deep breath, feeling the simple joy of knowing that someone in the world thought of her, cared for her, and quietly held her well-being in their heart. She thought of the young man, of his long work hours, and wondered if he had eaten breakfast or managed to rest a little before beginning his day. She smiled at the thought and went about her own tasks. But a warmth lingered in her chest that she had never felt before. Meanwhile, he began his route on his motorcycle, feeling the cool morning breeze against his face. As he passed familiar corners, he thought of her, imagining the simple routines she followed, the soft strength with which she navigated her life, and the resilience she had shown through countless small struggles. There was a smile on his face, a quiet, genuine smile that lingered long after it passed. He had come to realize that her presence in his life was no longer optional, it was essential. A thread that held his world together in ways he had not anticipated. The day unfolded with its usual rhythm. She went to the store, organizing racks, helping customers, and carrying out her responsibilities with diligence. He made deliveries, navigating the winding streets, often stopping to greet neighbors, or to make sure the elderly had received their parcels. And yet beneath the surface of ordinary routines, there was a current that bound them in awareness of each other, an anticipation of small moments shared, and a deepening understanding of the quiet, profound connection they nurtured. In the afternoon, they met by the river once again. The sun had begun to dip low, painting the water with golden reflections. There was no need for grand gestures. The woman simply sat on the bench, her bag beside her, while he settled next to her. Carrying a small umbrella in case the evening brought rain, they began to talk, not about heavy burdens or pressing matters, but about simple things: how the flowers in the park were blooming, how the children played by the fountain, and how the streets of the town seemed more alive when the sun lingered on the walls of old buildings. Yet, as they spoke, there was a subtle shift. Both of them felt it without naming it, a sense of closeness that went beyond friendship, beyond trust. It was in the way their hands brushed accidentally, the way their eyes lingered, and the way their silences felt comfortable and complete. They did not need to rush into words. The connection was understood. It had grown quietly over months, nurtured by patience, care, and the simple act of being there for each other through every small and large challenge. As the days turned into weeks, they began to face new challenges together. Life had a way of presenting obstacles, some expected, others sudden. The woman faced unexpected problems at the store: damaged shipments, a shortage of supplies, and a customer who grew impatient over trivial matters. Each time the young man would step in quietly, offering a helping hand, a calm word, or simply his presence. He did not solve everything, nor did he try to dominate the situation. He supported her, allowing her strength to shine while carrying what he could. He, too, faced his own difficulties. The responsibility of caring for his younger sibling sometimes weighed heavily on him, and work often demanded more hours than he could spare. There were moments when exhaustion threatened to pull him down, and in those times, she was there not to judge, not to criticize, but to offer comfort and encouragement. She prepared a simple meal for him when he returned late from deliveries, left a note with words of support, or just sat quietly beside him, letting him know he was not alone through these shared trials. They discovered that love was not about perfection or ease. It was about showing up consistently, even when tired, even when circumstances made it difficult. It was about patience and understanding, about seeing each other clearly and choosing to remain, even when life demanded more than either could give alone. And in this way, their bond strengthened, becoming a foundation that could withstand the unpredictable challenges of the world. One evening, after a particularly long and tiring day, they found themselves walking through the town streets as the sun set. The air was cool, carrying the faint scent of flowers from nearby gardens. They did not speak much, letting the quiet of the evening and the rhythm of their steps create a sense of calm and connection. Finally, she turned to him, her voice soft and filled with emotion. "I don't know what I would do without you." He looked at her, his own heart filled with the same quiet certainty. "And I don't know what I would do without you," he replied. There was no drama in his tone, no exaggeration, only truth, the simple, undeniable truth that they had become indispensable to each other. It was a moment of realization that went deeper than words. A moment when they understood that love is most profound when it is quiet, steady, and unwavering. From that day forward, their relationship became more intentional, though still gentle. They planned small activities together: picnic by the river, visit to the small library in town, a walk to watch the sunset. They did not need extravagant gestures or material displays of affection. Instead, they focused on presence, empathy, and shared experiences that reinforced the bond they had been cultivating for months. Each day, they learned more about each other, discovering nuances in personality, small habits, and dreams that added depth to their understanding. They also learned the value of communication. Misunderstandings still occurred, as they do in every relationship, but they faced them together. They spoke openly, listened carefully, and approached each situation with patience. What might have once caused doubt or tension now became an opportunity to strengthen trust, to understand each other better, and to reaffirm the care and respect that formed the core of their love. Seasons changed, and with them, came new moments of shared joy. Spring brought long walks through blooming gardens. Summer offered evenings by the river, where they watched the stars appear one by one. Autumn painted the streets with golden leaves, and winter brought quiet moments by the fire, wrapped in blankets and shared warmth. Each season carried ordinary activities, yet each became extraordinary because they were together. Discovering the beauty of life in its simplicity, their love was not loud or dramatic, but it was deeply felt and profoundly real. They celebrated small victories: her success at organizing a challenging new shipment at the store, his completion of a difficult delivery schedule, a day when life had felt easier than expected, and when setbacks occurred in illness, a delay. A moment of fatigue, they supported each other quietly without complaint, knowing that the presence of the other was a remedy stronger than words. As the months passed, they began to imagine a future together, not as a distant dream, but as a shared reality. They spoke of hopes and plans of a life built on trust, respect, and mutual care. They did not pressure each other with expectations or timelines. Instead, they allowed their love to guide their decisions, letting patience and understanding shape the choices they made. Every plan, every hope, every conversation reinforced the certainty that they had found something rare: a love that was steady, gentle, and enduring, even in ordinary moments. Their love shone. He would bring her favorite tea when he visited, and she would leave a small note in his bag, reminding him to rest. They laughed together over simple jokes, shared stories from their day, and held each other through moments of worry or exhaustion. It was in these small, consistent acts that they discovered the true essence of love, not in grand declarations or fleeting passions, but in care, empathy, and unwavering presence. One particularly quiet evening, as the town lay in the soft glow of streetlights, they sat together on their favorite bench by the river. The water reflected the moon and stars, shimmering gently. She leaned against him, feeling the steady rhythm of his heartbeat and the warmth of his presence. "I feel safe with you," she whispered, her voice filled with emotion. He held her closer, his hand resting gently on hers. "And I feel home with you," he replied. In that moment, there was no need for further words. They understood that love is not always about explanations or promises. It is about presence, trust, patience, and the quiet knowledge that someone will stand beside you through everything, no matter what comes. Their story, which had begun with a simple act of kindness, had evolved into something extraordinary. They had discovered that the purest love is not about perfection or grand gestures, but about showing up consistently, offering care without expectation, and building a life together through shared moments, understanding, and empathy. It was a love that healed wounds, nurtured dreams, and created a sense of security and joy that neither had experienced before. As their lives continued, they faced challenges, celebrated victories, and experienced the ordinary rhythms of life together. Yet through it all, they remained constant for each other. Every smile, every shared silence, every small act of kindness reinforced the bond they had nurtured over months. Their love had become a quiet force, steady and enduring, capable of weathering storms and brightening ordinary days. In the end, they realized that the true power of love lies not in grand declarations, extravagant gestures, or fleeting passion, but in the steady, patient, and unwavering care we offer to someone who becomes essential to our lives. They had found that kind of love in each other: quiet, pure, deeply human, and profoundly soul-touching. And so, in the gentle rhythm of their town, amidst the flowing river, the rustling leaves, and the soft glow of streetlights, they continued their journey together. Their love was not loud or dramatic, but it was enduring, transformative, and deeply felt. It was a love that had grown from kindness, strengthened by patience, and nurtured by presence, a love so pure that it would remain in their hearts forever, shaping their lives, comforting their souls, and inspiring all the quiet beauty that life had to offer in the ordinary days and quiet nights that followed. They knew that their story was not about perfection, nor about an easy path. It was about the choice to remain, the courage to trust, and the unwavering decision to nurture something rare and precious. Their love was alive in every glance, every smile, every gentle touch, a love that would endure, grow, and touch their souls for the rest of their lives. This was the love they had found, quiet, patient, enduring, and real. A love that did not need to be proven or announced because its presence was enough. And in that presence they had discovered the most extraordinary truth of all, that the simplest, quietest love can also be the most powerful, the most beautiful, and the most life-changing of all.